Well, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us today. We will be reading our Sunday readings for today. With me, we have Dora as our guest today. Dora is my sister, and I'm very honored that she is participating with us. And of course, I got my co-buddy, Francis, with us today. So we're going to jump right into our readings. So let me go to the share and same format that we've had in the past. So what I'm going to do is I'll go ahead and I'll do the reading, and then from the readings, I will we'll stop, pause, and then have a little discussion about it. So here we go with the first reading. The first reading, Deuteronomy, chapter 30, verses 10 through 14. Moses said to the people, "If only you would heed the voice of the Lord your God and keep his commandments and statutes that are written in this book of the law, when you return to the Lord your God, for this command that I enjoin on you today is not too mysterious and remote for you. It's not up in the sky that you should say, 'Who will go up to the sky and get this for us and tell us of it, that we may carry it out?' Nor is it across the sea that you should say, 'Who will cross the sea to get it for us and tell us of it, that we may carry it out?' No, it is something very near to you, already in your mouths and in your hearts. You have only to carry it out." So there's our first reading. One thing I did want to share is that, Deuteronomy, just a little something about Deuteronomy. So it's the fifth book in the Bible. So when we go through the Bible, we go through Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, there's Numbers, and then comes Deuteronomy. And those first five are called the Torah. What the word Deuteronomy means is second law. Why the second law? Because Moses first got the first law, the commandments, through Jesus, him and Jesus talking. The second law is basically what Deuteronomy is Moses sharing it with others. That's why it's called the second law. Deuteronomy says it means second law. So Deuteronomy, as you go through that book, it's all about Moses. You know how we get into, like, today's second reading is going to be with St. Paul, and then I think it's Luke. I can't remember. We'll get to the gospel. The gospel is then with one of the apostles. This is more not about somebody that's named Deuteronomy. It's about the second law, and these are all compilation. It's put together of Moses's speeches. These are all about his speeches. In this book, what the speeches, if you go through and you read chapter 29, and you read chapter 1, no matter what chapter in Deuteronomy, the theme is always going to be about obedience, and obedience is blessing. So all the blessings from God. So that being said, the thing that highlighted for me here was basically saying, guys, you don't have, or my people, for you to understand the commandments and statutes are like law of God's law. For you to understand that, it's not really complicated. You don't have to go to Mars or to the moon to figure it out. Nor do you have to cross the Pacific Ocean or Atlantic. No, because those are complicated things. It's simple. It's stuff you already know. Most of us already know the 10 Commandments or the top 2 commandments. So what I got out of this first reading basically was, guys, girls, don't overthink this. It's pretty simple. Now, that being said, I think understanding it is simple, but sometimes following the commandments is not easy. So that's what I got out of this. And was just going to ask you, Dora, any addition to this first reading?
I mean, you covered it pretty well. I feel like it's telling us, bringing it more relevant, right? Because you talked about how simple it is to access, and for me, like it says in the last sentence, with all your heart and all your soul. So basically, the way I see it is that you're absolutely right. I think when we think of even Moses in general, we're thinking like, man, he had to go far, and he was gone for a long time, and the mountains and the hills, and at the end of the day, he's saying, I made it easy for you. This came
Mm.
to me this way, but here's the message. And as long as you carry it in your heart, you will always be close to it. It will always be attainable. And I feel like these days, when I translate that, I feel like if there is a question of the commandments, or if there is a question of how to live our life, easy access nowadays, right? Make sure that we're bookmarking, or we have something that's easy and able to pull up on our phones, because that's easy access in today's day and age.
Mm. Oh, oh. You know what, Dora? You and I had a separate conversation. We're talking about AI. And even to your point, with that tool today, I mean, it's like, to your point, it's right here, close to my mind, close to my heart, right here. I don't have to go across the sea or to the moon to find it. I can get some of those answers right here. So, no, well stated. Francis, your thoughts or comments?
uh, already Dora ma'am said, but in one line, I understand and I get to know that everything depends on God and the complete faith to be surrendered by us to God. So everything will be easy.
No, that's I think all of us were kind of hitting that same. It's simple. it's it's simple, but and sometimes we try. We I think we as human beings try to complicate it. Oh, that's just for y'all holy rollers. Oh, those are just for you all people. Oh, everybody knows the basics of. Well, most people know the basics that there's one God, but everybody should know the basic golden rule that you're supposed to be good to your neighbor. That's not, you don't have to read books to know that, but the simplicity, I think that was the theme that came to all of us. Well, thank you for that. I'm now transitioned into the Psalm, for Sunday, so again, this is the 15th Sunday of Ordinary Time. Okay. And we're not going to read through all of this psalm. We're just going to read the first one. I'm going to ask Francis if he could read that, and then we'll kind of just talk about this in particular, kind of more focused on the refrain. But go ahead, Francis. If you can just read the first verse of this psalm for Sunday's reading.
Thank you. Psalm 69. Turn to the Lord in your need, and you will live. I pray to you, O Lord, for the time of your favor, O Lord. In your great kindness, answer me with your constant help. Answer me, O Lord, for bounteous is your kindness. In your great mercy, turn toward me.
Right, and then here, as the congregation would say, turn to the Lord in your need.
Turn to the Lord in your need,
and you will live. One thing I wanted to share, because I didn't know this from an educational perspective. Sometimes when you see these little parentheses and you see that CF, what it basically is saying is that phrase may not exactly come from the Bible, but it's kind of a response to, if you were to do this reading, if you look at the very top, it says Psalm 69, it has verse 14, 17, then jumps to 30, 31. Notice how this isn't basically 1 through 37. No, there's usually little pieces.
Bits and pieces.
Bits and pieces. But the main theme, the refrain that we review focuses on verse 33. So if you were to go to that psalm and look at verse 33, one of the Bibles reads, "For the Lord hears the poor and does not spurn those in bondage," which is, you can see how, and we do this often. A lot of people don't know this, that we, for either singing purposes or response purposes, kind of make it a little more simple. Turn to the Lord in your need, and you will live. Um, my quick interpretation is, if you don't turn to the Lord, you're that person in the handcuffs. You're bonded. It's not a cool thing. And if you do, you're released and you're free. That's fundamentally what I got out of that. I'll share I'll ask our guest, Dora. I mean, your thoughts.
Yes, absolutely. Trusting God's mercy and deliverance, even in the midst of suffering. So for me, this is powerful because usually when we're down and out, usually when we're suffering, usually when some type of sadness or depressions come over us, it's very hard for us to humble ourselves to pray, but that's what we really need to be doing, in the good times and the bad times. But this really speaks to me that, hey, even you, criminal, that may have just for whatever reason taken a life, even you, criminal, who is now looking at being behind bars or maybe even being put to death, such as our Lord, go ahead and pray during those tough times, and you can still be saved. It's like, it's that raw for me. Like, it's like you're rock bottom. Go ahead and kneel, humble yourself, and ask for that forgiveness. So yes, to another level, but that's exactly how I feel.
I love it. Oh, I love it. And I guess similar to our first reading, that I heard the theme of, it's that simple. When just keep God with you, and you're gonna live. You're gonna make it through whatever the scenario is. Don't include God, it's gonna be a lot more difficult. You're gonna have to deal with the whole human thing of it. Once again, pretty simple, but it's not easy when you're in that tough time. So no. Francis, anything to add or thoughts?
As you say, I agree with you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Awesome. No. Thank you. Hey, yes, thank you for that discussion. And I'm going to go and move to our second reading. Remember, on Sundays we normally have a first reading, and then we have a second reading. Well, they have the psalm, and then the second reading, and then the gospel. During the week, you don't always have that second reading. But this Sunday, we have a second reading, and I'm going to ask Dora if she would please read that for us.
Yes, reading to Colossians 1, chapter 1, verses 15 through 20. Christ Jesus is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation. For in him were created all things in heaven and on earth, the visible and the invisible, whether thrones or dominions or principalities of powers. All things were created through him and for him. He is before all things, and in him all things hold together. He is the head of the body, the church. He is the beginning, the firstborn from the dead, that in all things he himself might be preeminent. For in him all the fullness was pleased to dwell, and through him to reconcile all things for him, making peace by the blood of his cross, through him, whether those on earth or those in heaven.
Thank you. If you have a thought real quick, you can share, or do you want me to go ahead and start it?
Well, I love this reading because it speaks of, and you've highlighted it here, the invisible God, right? I remember just being young, and I remember, challenges that I never really had the challenge with, but others would say, well, if I can't see him, he doesn't exist. So I love the fact that we touch here on the invisible God through the firstborn of all creation, right? We're reminding everybody he's the one. He was born for all of this creation, and through whom all things were created and reconciled. So It sums it up. Like, he's the one and only. And I think back to your point, Paul, the simplicity of who he is, why he's here, and what he can do for us is just deepened in this reading. So, yeah, I love it. I love the fact that it's just reminding you his roles in our
Yeah.
lives. We can
And when you say that,
definitely.
he reminds us, you're talking about it's Jesus.
Jesus, yes, yes,
Yeah, no,
yes,
no, no.
yes.
I knew that, but I wanted to make sure. Just
Yes,
right?
yes, yes.
It's
Because
like
he's the, yeah, Jesus,
he's
he's
the
the
one we can
invisible
feel
God.
and touch. He's the one we can feel and touch.
Yes.
And he said, and to your point, he is the representation of the invisible one. Nobody's ever seen God. Moses saw him in hearing his voice. Others have seen him come to them as different people and angels, but God. But back to your point, it's when we see Jesus, that is the image of something we don't see. We get to see him, but he's representing the one we don't see. Awesome, awesome, awesome.
I believe that, and truly he is the head of the body, the church, and without him the church is incomplete. So when we go to the church, so when we go there, we always realize different feelings inside our soul, and always feels us the much better than other place also. So I noticed that whenever we are sad, we always go to church because we know even he is invisible.
And what both of you are describing, as you're describing it, the thing that hits me is that's like the basis of faith. What are the definitions of faith? Is believing in something when you haven't really touched it, or seen it.
Right. And can I add one more thing?
Sure.
I feel like the other piece of it, after hearing Francis's feedback on this as well, is for those that are still seeking, for those that are new on their spiritual journey, for those that maybe have lost their way and are coming back, it's pretty cool when you can get to a point where you don't have to see the God because you can feel him, and when you're receiving him. Francis talks about going into church. There's a different feeling that will come over you when you really humble yourself, when you walk into that church. And this is the part I'm telling many people, even at my age, when it doesn't matter where you are in your spiritual journey, but what you're working towards is being able to feel him and his presence, even though he's invisible. And you can do that. You can do that around other loved ones. You can do that when you go to church, back to Francis's point. My gosh, and what a humbling experience when you're taking in the Holy Ghost, or you're drinking, the blood. At the end of the day, I visualize myself being around that table. At the end of the day, I humble myself, and it gives me goosebumps to talk about it. That's where we're trying to go with these readings. And that's what makes this reading really makes me feel like the invisible God is what I feel as well.
I like that. You can feel without seeing. Absolutely right. Thank you all very much for that. That was awesome. The gospel. I'm gonna go ahead and get to the gospel. The gospel is a little longer one, so bear with me as I read through it. And I obviously read it prior to this gathering, and I find two parts to it. So see if you notice the two parts. If not, at least for me, there were two parts, and I'll share my thoughts on both parts. Here it goes. Gospel according to Luke. There was a scholar of the law who stood up to test Jesus and said, "Teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life?" Jesus said to him, "Well, what's written in the law?" "Well, how do you read it?" He said in reply, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your being, with all your strength, and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself. He replied to him, you have answered correctly. Do this, and you will live. But because he wished to justify himself, he said to Jesus, and who is my neighbor? Jesus replied, a man fell victim to robbers as he went down from Jerusalem to Jericho. They stripped and beat him and went off, leaving him half dead. A priest happened to be going down the road, but when he saw him, he passed by on the opposite side. Likewise, a Levite came to the place, and when he saw him, he passed by on the opposite side. But a Samaritan traveler who came upon him was moved with compassion at the sight. He approached the victim, poured oil and wine over his wounds and bandaged them. Then he lifted him up on his own animal, took him to an inn, and cared for him. The next day he took out 2 silver coins and gave them to the innkeeper with the instruction, take care of him. If you spend more than what I have given you, I shall repay you on my way back. Which of these 3, in your opinion, was the neighbor to the robber's victim? And he answered, the one who treated him with mercy. Jesus said to him, go and do likewise. So, it does flow together. I get that, but the 2 pieces to me was, I got out of the first piece was a whole other gospel where Jesus being challenged, saying, oh, the Pharisees are challenging him, but you think you're so smart. Of all the commandments, which is the number one? Jesus says, he says, love your God and only your God, only that one God, and treat your neighbor as yourself. So I kind of look at this first part of kind of Jesus taking this opportunity to remind, yes, we have 10 commandments. Yes, we have a whole lot of statutes. Yes, we have a whole bunch of this and but you want to sum them all up, respecting your parents, not committing adultery, and all those things. You want to sum them all up? Just remember these 2. One God, treat your neighbor as yourself. So it is a flow, but I kind of see that first part being that reminds me of, oh man, when he gets challenged, and the scholar there is the one that says this. So he's heard it before. So he's saying it back to Jesus. Jesus says, you're right on. You're absolutely correct. He goes, but who is my neighbor? And of course, matter of fact, my wife and I just finished the last episode of Chosen of the 5th series. It's taken me a while, but I finally got there. And you see, I'm sitting there, and it's so funny because they depict this so well. They ask Jesus a question, he can't just give a quick answer. He's got to tell a parable. Mm-hmm. So for him to answer about the neighbor, he gives this parable. Most of us, even as children, hear about the Good Samaritan. We hear about the Good Samaritan, and what a lot of people don't know is a Levite. The Levite, is I went the other way. The Levite is like a heavy duty priest. So even a heavy duty priest just kind of like, geez, kind of the human thing that hits me when I think about this, I think about, I'm driving along, I see somebody with the car on the side, I'm going, oh, I'm running late. I want so bad to stop, and and we could, and we don't. I don't all the time, But anyway, that was kind of my summation, and I looked at this and yeah, scholar was right, and all the scholar said is, okay, you guessed right? You guessed right, the Samaritan was the right. By the way, Samaritan are like total opposite of the like, this is like I'm from Texas. This is and I went to the University of Texas. I'm a Longhorn. It's like a Longhorn helping an Aggie.
Yeah.
It's like that's who ended up helping him.
Yep.
Kind of put aside the fact that we're rivals in football. geez, I see an Aggie and he's hurt. A good Christian will go and say, I'm going to help you out, even though you're not part of my group. But that's kind of where my head was at. Dora, your
Yeah,
thoughts?
you summed it up real well. So I'm gonna latch off on the on thy neighbor. I'm gonna steer a little towards thy neighbor, and I love the question. And who is my neighbor? And that's powerful because we realize through life's challenges, and as we get older and we become wiser, we realize that neighbor is also your enemy. And that's some of the hardest things. That's one of the hardest things that, and I can humble myself and tell you that it wasn't probably up until the last maybe 4 or 5 years that I truly understood what this piece meant. When and I kind of put myself in this conversation, wait, who's my neighbor? Like, even these people that did wrong to me, like, even this person that is just taking everything from me, how do you want me to pray for that person? And that's is where my message really hits hard, is in these readings, and we hear it throughout the year. you know um in many different passages we talk about this, but here I think the hardest challenge for us is to even treat our enemies the way God is wanting us. Treat them as yourself. And that, I feel, is the hardest thing to do, but it is so rewarding when you start to realize it's the right thing to do and you start to do it. If you ask me, and again, going into that sidebar conversation, there's healing in that. There's healing in it. You won't know it till you start to do it. But once you start to forgive those, once you start to pray for the enemy, you yourself evolve into a better Samaritan, or or following the Lord's way. But I love that, Paul. One God. I mean, there's one God. He reminds us in almost everything we read, but here there's the one God, and then there's the love thy neighbor as yourself. So yeah, that's the part that really kind of touches home for me, is even your enemies are your neighbors.
We all brought that around, and Dora just kind of punching it with even your enemy. Because sometimes you read this too literal, that, oh, neighbor, I'm only supposed to be good just to the guy next, or lady right to this side of that side. No, this is, to your point, for anybody. And it's even your enemies. Anything else? If not, we good? All right. Well, guys, we want to thank you very much for joining us today. I want to thank, I guess, my sister, Dora, and my buddy Francis for all you do to help share the word. May God bless you. Take care.
Thank you.